All right, welcome back to The Drift. We're here with, you know who he is, the man, the myth, the legend, towboat captain Clint Allen.
Yeah.
Clint, today we're going to talk about something that a whole lot of people don't do in boating. And it's crazy in that some people find themselves doing this without thinking they're going to do it. And that is boating after dark, boating at night. What should we think about when we boat at night? Look, if we're an experienced captain and a charter guy, obviously you know what you're doing. You go out at 3 a.m. I like to say I don't go out at, the only time I'll get up before the sun rises is if I'm trying to catch a flight to the Caribbean. You know, I'm not one of those guys that'll get up early. You can always tell the guys.
Like me that goes fishing at 4 in the morning.
Yeah, right. You can tell the guys that do that when you go to the marina, right? And it's 1 o'clock on a beautiful summer Saturday afternoon, and you had your first drink at the marina, and you look down and there's no one on the boat. You're like, those guys probably went out at 2 a.m. And they're still in bed. They'll be down a little bit later. So I'm not that guy. Those guys know how to do it. But we're talking about the people who might be out for the day and darkness rolls in without you knowing it, and it gets you. And let's say you throw your nav lights on, and guess what? My nav lights aren't working.
Right.
Or my navigation isn't quite what it should be to go out there at night. So what should we think about when boating after dark?
Well, so safety, number one concern. And that's every podcast I do with you, we touch on it. Safety is number one. So on our towboats, we have a daily checklist we do. We don't want to find out at dusk that our lights don't work.
No.
So we check them daily. And I advise recreational boaters to do the same. Before you get underway, check everything. Check your lights. Check your check everything. Check your whole everything that's possibly could be used later on.
You don't want to find out your nav lights aren't working when you're out there.
When you turn them on, right? So you check them prior. I know things can break even after you've checked it, but at least you've checked everything. So that's what we do. And then there's no surprises.
Right.
Does your flashlight have batteries in it? Again, it's nothing worse than picking up a flashlight and it's dead. Yeah. So that kind of stuff is safety that could be paramount when you need it.
So even if you're like what I like to call a day boater, right? You know, you go out there during the day, most of the time you're in by the time night falls. You should make sure you're prepared to boat at night in the event that something happens. You could be out there and you could have engine issues, you could have delay issues that put you in night boating. And night boating, look, if you've got a full moon, if you're lucky enough to have a full moon or you know, a decent moon, you've got moonlight. But if you don't, you could be out there in pitch darkness.
Yeah.
And for a lot of folks like that, they may have a GPS, but if they don't have radar, you know, you don't know what's bearing down on you, right?
Yeah, and it's a whole different world at night. Things look different. Even I mean, I've been boating forever on Buzzards Bay, where we boat out of, so I know the place by the back of my hand. However, at nighttime, the entrance to come into New Bedford, depending on what angle you're coming at, you see different light configurations, and it's confusing.
So for those who don't know, so New Bedford, Massachusetts has got a hurricane barrier, and there's an entry to that dike that you've got to hit. If you hit either side of that entry to the dike, you're hitting the stone dike there. And again, you know, everyone says, well, I've got my GPS. Your GPS is not going to tell, not all the time, it can, but it's not going to all the time tell other boaters where you are.
So there's a lot of things that you can do in addition to the GPS, or should have, if you're intending to boat at night. Radar is the top of the list. You absolutely should have a radar, and know how to interpret what you're seeing on the radar is more important. A lot of people, they'll buy a fancy, $15,000 electronic package.
They don't know how to read it.
You don't know how to use it. So, you break out the owner's manual and learn how to use it. You have to. How to interpret. Radars can be a little difficult if you're not sure how to interpret what you're seeing. So again, you can self-learn. You don't have to be an expert at it. You don't have to take a course on it, but you should know how it's working pretty, the basics of it, and it makes you safer at night. I like to tell people beginning that ask me that question, gee, how do you navigate at night? I tell them, go to a close destination, 2 or 3 miles from where your slip is, and intentionally leave just as it's getting dark. So you get a feel for it. It's partially light. You can still see the buoys. You're still comfortable. And the next time you go out, leave a little bit later. Now it's a little bit darker. Still some ambient light but from daylight, but a little darker. And then the third time you get it.
That's a great
complete
point.
darkness.
So you know where you are. You're close to home.
You're close to home.
You
know the area.
Yeah, because a lot of guys or gals who are out there boating, they might not even know that their instruments lights aren't working. So it's sort of like, I guess you should think of it as sort of like a pre-flight test that a pilot.
Right.
A pilot doesn't go up and say, well, the last time I flew the plane, the flaps were working,
right,
so it should be fine this time. You should sort of run through those little tests.
Yeah, daily
often.
checklists. Yeah.
And if you're at a marina, right, you're down there, you've got some time during the day, it takes 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But things like that, like checking, making certain your nav gauges are illuminated, you sort of have to do that at night, right?
Yeah.
So you won't know.
Right. And sometimes there's surprises, but at least if you're comfortable, if you eased yourself into night, being behind the helm at night, as I said, just a little bit dark, then a little bit darker, and then maybe the third or fourth time you try this, now it's pitch black, and you grow comfortable to it.
Let's talk about, I'll be politically correct, person overboard at night. More difficult, right?
Right.
Somebody drops into the chop and you're out there at night. It's going to be more difficult to find them. Should everyone wear a personal flotation device?
Well,
life jacket, PFD, whatever you want to call it, on board at night if you're underway at night.
Yeah, and most of them are equipped, and if they're not equipped with it, a light, that water activated. So it'll come on automatically once the water hits it. And you can purchase them if you don't have it already.
So do the PFDs have those on them?
Typically not. No,
so there are lights that you can clip on that'll activate when you hit the water.
Yeah.
And then somebody will be able to find you.
Right.
And again, out there on a full moon evening, not really an issue. Out there on a no moon evening, it could be, it's dark.
Right. So hopefully, number one, they have a PFD on. And that's someone on board, separate from the captain, can keep their eye on them. That's typically how a man overboard situation is handled.
Right.
The second person, keeps an eye on the person that went overboard and lets the captain know, okay, just circle back around, but you constantly keep your eyes and point to where the person is overboard. That's your job.
You've always talked about that. We've talked about that in prior podcasts, the man overboard situation. And that's what you do, right? Somebody falls overboard, you tell somebody immediately. And this is a discussion that should be had before you leave.
Right.
With somebody, you say, look, if this happens, you're my designated point, or if it's a family boating, you could discuss this around the dining table one day. So if wherever on the boat somebody falls off, somebody's got to point at them and keep pointing at them until that boat can come back around.
Right.
With a power boat, a little easier. With a sailboard, unfortunately, that can be quite a process trying to get back to somebody. And certainly at night, even more difficult.
You can lose sight of them quickly. So that's the importance of the illuminated. If you have something illuminated, other than just there's reflective stripes on the life jackets, but they're not going to really show up.
So other safety pieces of equipment that we should have on board.
So
what do we think?
Yeah, well, AIS is another great.
Talk about that. What is AIS?
So the AIS will all commercial boats, fishing boats, and especially a lot of fishing boats in our area. You can see on your GPS screen the name of the vessel, the heading, it'll be a little triangle or a boat shape on your GPS,
Mm-hmm.
and you put your cursor on it, and then it'll notify or tell you what the name of the vessel is, what the
Okay.
speed they're doing, what direction they're going. And if there are two AIS transponders. One just sends your signal out, and one does both receive and send out.
So this is tied to your GPS. So your GPS doesn't only receive this information, it puts out, it talks.
Right. So
Okay.
the other vessel that's in your area it's in its line of sight, the same thing as your VHF radio.
Okay.
The antennas are very similar. So the other vessel, if you're in a crossing situation,
Mm-hmm.
they know who you are and you know who they are.
Now, is this a subscription-based
No,
feature, or is this free
they're,
with?
they're about, I think they start at about $600.
Okay.
For the lesser
Mm-hmm.
powerful ones. The more powerful ones are about $2,000, something like that. All available at West Marine.
So we've talked about good investments for boating. We've talked about the Towboat US membership being the best one.
Mhm.
This is probably second best. I mean, this is something that most boaters probably don't think about, but they probably should, right?
Sure, and in a foggy situation, it helps.
Mhm.
Again, you need to know how to interpret everything. So you're going to have a radar, and these boat figures will show up on your radar screen as well. So again, you know what that vessel is. You can't see it with your naked eye because it's foggy.
Right.
It's appearing on the radar. I'm also knowing that I'm seeing the AIS target. Now you can put your cursor on it, and you know the name of the ship. So now you can hail them on the VHF radio.
Smart.
And now you can communicate with not just guessing there's a vessel out there. You know the name of it.
You know, another thing that I've heard that you should do, and you talk about sort of the test when you're in the area that you know, is practicing dropping an anchor at night. Because you could be coming back, and you've said all the time that the first thing you should do when you have an issue with your boat, before you call Boat US and get Clint Allen or one of his team, is to drop your anchor. Secure yourself.
Real important, right?
Get your position. So if you're out at night, right, you need to know how to drop. That needs to be automatic.
Second nature, right.
Second nature. Let's practice dropping that anchor at night, right?
Yeah, real important. And all those skills, everything that we've talked about so far, you don't want to learn
when you have to.
When you have
right.
to.
Yeah,
It should be second nature. I'll tell you, all our life, my children grew up, and they're all adults now. I'm getting to be an old man, but we grew up on the water. And all my children knew how to run the boat.
Right.
My wife, very proficient at running the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should know, not just out on a joyride. Sometimes that situation is different. You're bringing friends out that have never been on a boat in their life.
And who's the second captain, right? Who can run that
Right.
boat if
So
Dad
they're
falls
they're
overboard?
just out to enjoy their
Sure.
day. They're not expecting to have to set an anchor or point to a man overboard. So you have to have, most cases, your wife or your son, someone, a family member that knows. You don't want to be teaching someone what to do hey, we're in trouble.
Or you don't want to
here.
be teaching somebody what to do when darkness falls, once darkness has fallen, right?
Right.
That's not a good
Right.
idea either.
Right.
So the other thing would be flares, right? Talk about the use of flares. Like when can flares be used during the day, or is it just a nighttime thing, or do you anchor first, call towboat, and send up a warning flare, or are flares a thing of the past now with cell phones and GPS and towboat? What do we need flares for?
So you have to have a flare kit on your boat.
When was the last time someone sent up a flare for you, and you followed a flare to a distressed boat?
Well, so that's a touchy subject because you're not supposed to shoot them off unless you're really in a jam.
Okay.
So we'll have a customer ask us that. You want me to shoot a flare up? We're like, God, no.
Because now you're alerting the cavalry.
Right.
Now the Coast Guard and everybody
involved, right.
and think of all the folks sitting on the back decks at home to see the flare go up.
I just saw a flare go up,
Right.
and sure, the Coast Guard has to be notified. They're going to send out the cavalry. So we tell them, no, please, no, do not shoot off
So
a
a
flare.
flare should only be used if.
You're in a real jam.
So what's a real jam? Give me an example.
Okay, so you
know.
did set your anchor. You broke down and you set
Mhm.
your anchor, and it's pretty windy, and you're getting driven towards the shore. Your anchor's not holding well, and you're getting driven towards the shoreline. Going to be certain peril if you hit those rocky shoreline. There might be a situation where a
Then it's
flare
time
could be
for-
shot off.
Then it's time for the rocket's red glare, right?
Right. Or, I mean, an emergency, a medical emergency would be
Okay.
another good.
Mhm.
I mean, you really need help and you need it as quickly as possible.
Right.
But for your average boater, average breakdowns, unless, as I said, a real medical emergency or a mechanical emergency, if you're sinking, sure, another
Right.
reason to shoot a
Right.
flare.
If you want to get other boaters to you quick.
Right.
Let's say you can't hail them on a radio, you're sinking, you need to get some other boaters. You need somebody to know that you're
Yes.
out there. You're not
Right.
confident.
Always
that-
remember that. So if you shoot off a flare, there's got to be someone in eyesight that saw that,
Right.
and they're going to actually see it go up and see, gee, it was right there.
It was right there.
It might be 2 or 3 miles, but they can
Sure.
get to you. But again, that's not for I'm broken down or I'm out of fuel. you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
some people want to, well, shoot a flare, shoot a
Oh,
flare.
you've
No,
seen
no,
some-
Cap.
yeah,
No,
I'm sure
you don't
you've
need
seen
to
it
shoot
all,
a
Clint.
flare. You're safely anchored. We'll be out to you in 15 minutes. Just sit tight.
And
you know?
flares don't, but you should check your flares, right? Because flares don't last forever. Is there an expiration date on flares?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
once, so many times you go to check your flares and it's the flare, the packaging is wet, the thing is sitting there all soaked.
Yeah,
and you're
you got to take care of
you
them.
I don't think this is going to work, right?
They come in a nice canister, most of them, and
Mhm.
it's dry. It'll
Yeah.
stay dry. But you should stow them in a dry area in your boat. Check the dates. I write right on the orange canister. I write the expiration date, so at a
Smart.
glance you know. There's really no need to open that up if you're keeping it stored in a dry
Right.
spot.
Mhm.
My expiration date's written on it. But a good thing for your average boater, like I said, nobody shoots flares off. You could interview 100 boaters.
Yeah. When was the last time you
Nobody
shot a
shoots
flare?
them off.
I don't know.
But
I've
it's
never
something
shot
that's
one.
important
Yeah.
if you need it.
Right.
However, that being said, instead of replacing these flares, I think it's every 5 years. I think they go out of date. You can buy now, and it's approved by the Coast Guard recently. I think 2 years ago, electronic one, battery operated, and it sends out a continuous SOS signal. I think for like 30 hours, pretty long.
Oh, interesting.
3C batteries. They should be changed annually.
So it's an electronic flare.
Yes. Yeah,
Interesting.
and approved for the to replace flares.
Okay.
It's Coast Guard approved.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it's 3C batteries. You should change them annually. That's the shelf life on them, or they recommend. But the thing will go for 30 hours, and it floats. It floats upright, so it can be seen overhead from aircraft or from, boater. I think it's a 10 miles, I think, is the range on it.
Probably smart to have, even if you're not just boating at night.
Yeah.
But again, oftentimes you're late. You don't plan on being out at night. It's later in the evening, and something happens, and night falls, and there you are. And you have no idea what to do, but you need to have these safety precautions.
Yeah. Safety's number one.
Nailed down.
And like I said, it's not when you're in trouble. You want to know what to do if you ever get in trouble. Hopefully you keep yourself out of trouble by being a prudent boater,
Right.
knowing your navigation equipment.
Sure.
But breakdowns happen. They happen often. Then, so sometimes as prepared as you want to be, a breakdown occurs.
So a lot of folks don't have good binoculars. Important, right?
Yep.
You're out there at night, or you find yourself, even during the day, but you find yourself out there at night, and you may be boating in an area that you boat all the time, you're very familiar with during the day, but here it is night, things look different. You're just looking at lights, you're
Right.
looking at markers.
It can be confusing.
Sure. So a good set of binoculars is always good to have. I mean, this is all common sense stuff. It's just taking the time to check those systems, right?
Right. Another good option is it's rather expensive, but they do have night vision cameras. You're starting to see them more and more on the the higher end vessels that are out there have the FLIR set up, and they're expensive, but it's a hell of another great tool to have for night travel.
You know what? I think those are going to come down in price.
They
You
are.
get night vision now and home security cameras for like $500 or $300.
Yeah,
they're nothing.
they're
They're
slowly
yeah.
coming down, but they're still rather expensive. We have them on two of the
I saw that.
towboats.
I saw some videos
Yeah.
of yours. They must really help out, given what you do, right?
It's really nice when you get not so much traveling across Buzzards Bay. I use it. We split our screen, so I'll have radar, then the camera, and then my other screen is dedicated to the GPS with radar overlay, the chart. But they come in really handy once you get back into the harbor where the fella is going to go to a mooring.
Right.
And they're
You
amazing.
gotta see them
I mean,
mooring,
it's just
yeah.
amazing. When we first purchased it, Casey and I were out doing some testing with it.
Now Casey's your son, right? Who's also
Yes,
a towboat captain.
yeah, Captain Casey. So he's and he's the tech guy a little bit more than me, So he set these cameras up and everything, and it was amazing. We didn't know what it was at first. We saw an object in the water, maybe 200 feet away. That's pretty far. It turns out it was a Gatorade bottle floating in the water, and that camera picked it up like it was right 5 feet in front of you.
Now that you have it, you probably couldn't imagine being out there without it.
Right. Yeah,
right?
it's another tool.
Yeah, it's another tool.
And you have all these tools in your chest, and again, the important part of the whole thing, you can have all the toys in the world, but if you don't know how to use them, he says, "Oh yeah, I got a FLIR camera. I don't even know how to turn it on."
Well, we've done in prior podcasts, we've talked about that with GPS systems, and people who have these systems, they have no idea about the capability of these systems.
Right. Yeah, we've talked about that. I think in prior ones where somebody would run aground and you'd say, "Jesus, he's got two big giant GPS screens up on. How could that happen?"
Yeah.
And it's a lapse of concentration is what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got a lot to look at, and what'll often happen with those guys, they've got so much to look at, right, that they're not doing the key thing, which is looking above the instruments,
right,
and trying to see what's in front of you. You know.
Yeah, Columbus didn't have all that.
Exactly. He did a pretty good job, that guy Columbus,
he did, right?
Except for the Indian thing. But, we won't talk about that. We won't get political on this podcast. So, what about it? Here's a basic, some kind of a sound signaling device. Does your horn work?
Yeah.
More than a horn, like a lot of 25-foot. You hit the horn, it's like. It sounds like a Volkswagen horn, right?
Right.
And but you should have a hand.
Yeah, the CO2, right? They're really loud. The air horns, We have a pretty loud horn on all our towboats. It's through the hailer, so we have a loud hailer. We can.
It's like a siren thing. Like
a police siren. You can do the beep beep, right? And that's pretty loud. But what I find with that is when you're on your boat in the roar of your engine, it's difficult to hear that kind of stuff. They say you sound the fog signals and.
Five blasts
is the danger signal, but that's difficult to pick up. And as I'm getting older, my hearing's diminishing, no question about it. So for me I could be cruising right by someone and then hear this 5 blasts, I wouldn't even hear it.
Yeah, it's not going to be much, right?
I'm not trying to downplay it, but
but sound can travel. Sound travels over the water pretty well, right?
Right.
I mean, I won't forget. Just a little backstory on me. Years ago, we took a sailboat to Nantucket. We chartered a sailboat, and we were fogged in for like 6 hours. If you've ever been fogged in on a sailboat, when it's just rolling, it's right, motion sickness galore. And there was our captain with a handheld, like, it almost looked like a freaking kazoo, and he's sitting on the ball. It seemed like every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And it was after a fun weekend of partying on Nantucket on the way home. And let me tell you, that was the longest. I think
that's a stressful.
I think I probably would have faked a heart attack just to be airlifted off that boat at that point. And I think I remember saying to the person I was with, if that guy blows into that fucking thing, when part of that freaking horn, if that guy blows into that freaking horn one more time, I'm going to lose my shit. But anyway, so some kind of a sound signaling invite, because fog plays the same game as darkness, right? If not worse, because fog will hit you like this.
Yeah.
So really, and in a dense fog, you're not seeing your hand.
You know, it's weird because we get a lot of fog where we boat up in Massachusetts, Buzzards Bay area. A lot of fog here for whatever reason. I guess some parts of the country don't get it as thick as ours. Or
Yeah,
as
fog
often.
happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to this day, I do not like navigating in the fog.
It's tough.
It's stressful. It's stressful.
And you have all the toys.
Yeah,
I mean, you have
man,
all
and I
the-
know how to
right.
interpret them, and
Yeah.
it's like foggy. It's like, well, you know, I'm not afraid to do it,
Right.
but I'll tell you what, I'm like, man, this is just sucks. It's,
So, and you have to go out. You get
Yeah.
a call
yeah,
with that dense, can't see my hand fog.
right.
You guys have to roll, right?
And you know, I don't. Maybe it's me, maybe it's not me, but I think for some reason you're supposed to be heading this way,
And you think you're going the other
and
way.
your mind's telling you to go this way.
Well, it's what pilots. It's just ask John F. Kennedy
F.
Jr.
J.
about that,
right.
right? It's what pilots get. You get a warped sense of
Yeah.
where level is.
So with JFK, it was a little different because at least in a boat, one thing is you know the boat's not upside down.
right.
An airplane, you can
don't know.
lose
And you're
Right.
right. Your nose.
the plane could be inverted and you don't even realize it. So boating's a little bit better, but boy, I'll tell you what, man, it's nerve wracking. So the average, that's another thing. But we talked about safety.
Mhm.
Fog comes on like that sometimes.
Yeah.
So now you're between Cutty Hunk and the mainland.
Yeah.
And the fog comes
And
in.
if you're uncomfortable, but just sit up just a little closer to the mic.
Mhm.
If you're uncomfortable, Clint, in fog, and you say, well, I'm just going to drop my anchor and try to wait it out,
Mhm.
you need to know how to drop your anchor without, you could quite possibly not be able to see your hands.
Right.
The fog could be that bad, right?
Again, you should know how to do that in any conditions.
Right.
Windy, rough, fog, night,
Yeah.
day. Don't learn how to drop your anchor.
A
when
beautiful 80-degree day.
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
little
Well, you should know how to
continental.
do it at
Right.
any circumstance. You know, we had a fellow the other day call us, routine breakdown, looking for assistance. Called our office. Never once. He said he was going to anchor his vessel and he'd be waiting for us.
Mhm.
And it was going to be a quick. He was right outside where we keep our boats.
Sure.
15 minutes, I think 20 minutes. We might have quoted him. Be there in about 20 minutes, Cap. The captain gets out. He calls me on the cell phone. He says, Clint, he says, the guy's in the rocks.
Hmm.
I'm like, in the rocks? I said, he's supposed to be on the west side of the channel. He said, oh, it's the same boat. He's in the rocks. So anyways, now Captain Casey and I were in the area. We jumped on the boat. We head out
Mhm.
there. Sure enough, the guy's in the rocks. After we get it all said and done, I'm like, what's going on,
Yeah.
Cap?
Yeah,
Well, I was letting my anchor out, and it slipped through my hands.
Oh, he
And-
lost his anchor.
And he lost his anchor.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, I guess it can happen, you know?
Yeah, usually. Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't, because I'll tell you a story. I always tell
Well, you should have.
blunders.
Right, that other end of the anchor line. Make sure the anchor's tied
Right.
when you throw it out.
I
right?
always tell blunders
Yeah.
that I've had in my life, and we've all had them.
Yeah,
So-
not me. I've heard these stories about other people.
Right,
not
right.
necessarily
And my
me.
son always tells me, he says,
Yeah.
you shouldn't tell people your screw ups.
No, they're going to learn by it. That's what we're about.
There you go.
Sure.
So I was fishing in Quick's Hole, famous striped bass. This is years ago.
Hmm.
And my anchor was dragging a little bit. So I let out some more scope, meaning let
Yeah.
out more line. The
Yeah.
more line you have out, the better hooking
Yep.
ability. I let my line out, let out a little more. All of a sudden, whoop, the rope goes right before my...
That moment. What do they say? The moment when?
the
you
moment
realize,
when...
Right?
I'm screwed. So I lost a $100 anchor, $150 anchor. But not only that, it ruined my night. I couldn't fish. You had to be anchored to
But
fish.
at least you had, imagine doing that if you didn't have power, if
Right.
you were in
Right.
in an emergency situation and you, right?
So why I tell my Captain Casey always tells me, gee, don't tell people your blunders. I said, well, it's real life.
Yeah.
But I never, every single boat that I owned after that, including the towboats, the line is fixed. The anchor line, the road's fixed.
Right.
So it can't do that.
So you should fix the end of your
Sure.
fix the end of your anchor line to the boat
Somehow,
somewhere,
right.
even in the anchor
Right.
hole.
I just drill a hole through the bulkhead
Yeah.
and tie a knot on the other side of the bulkhead, and that's that. It'll never happen to me again. But the fellas that don't learn the lesson, those are the
Folks,
ones.
here's your Captain Clint Allen towboat
Tip of the day.
Tip of the day.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of that.
Yeah,
here on
tie
the drift,
your
right?
road through the bulkhead, or somehow or another tie your road, and that'll
Right.
never happen. So it'll never happen to me again.
Right.
But I can see it, and happened to that fellow last week, and it
Yeah.
didn't end up being a disaster. The tide was just right. He hit a rock or two, and he glanced off him, and he ended up. It wasn't a horror show.
Yeah.
We got him in tow eventually,
Right.
and brought him in. No problems with the boat. Probably had some cosmetic damage, but
Yeah.
it could
had
have
a
been
bad
worse.
day.
Could have been worse.
Yeah.
So
He
lesson
could have not had Towboat US insurance.
on top of it, right?
And that would have been a
Right.
really bad day.
Right.
When you show up and you get a guy like that back to his home port and you go, well, yeah, look. Or the guy who goes, I thought I renewed that.
Mm.
I
tell them, don't procrastinate. When you get your renewal notice, immediately take care of it.
That is the best. We've talked about this a million times. That is the best money spent in boating. The
one
cost
thing-
of dinner at the marina, right?
Yeah, what's common with that, though, when you bring up the renewal part, most people, I think there's close to 800,000 members now nationwide, or better than that, better than 800,000.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, a lot of them, and I get the call to my office constantly, hey, I'm up for renewal, but I don't want to do it now because I don't renew until July. And I said, no, Cap, you can renew now.
Yeah, renew. Sure.
Right. And you're not losing anything. You're just basically prepaying.
Right.
So I always tell them that don't procrastinate or put it on your refrigerator. Well, I'll take care of this next month. Pay it. The minute you get your renewal notice in the mail, pay it up.
Pay it up.
Yeah. Don't wait and, I got 30 days or I've got
I'm
60
amazed,
days.
it still amazes me how inexpensive in all of boating, right?
Mhm.
Everyone always says, anything marine is going to cost you a ton of money. But in all of boating, a Towboat US membership is the best buy. I mean, you pay that for two dock lines.
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
In the scheme of things. I mean, boating's expensive. You got insurance, maintenance, slip fees, and boat insurance. So yeah, it's a in the scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket.
How is Boat US able to keep that so inexpensive? Is it just volume, like you said, numbers of members?
Yeah, and our membership's growing, annually for sure. But yeah, 800,000 members. So we get a few breakdowns.
Yeah.
And the other 600,000 members or 700,000 members pay for the ones that are unfortunate enough to break down.
Now, for those who choose to take the gamble, they should know that this guy here gets paid from the time he turns his key on at his dock until the time you get back, right?
Right.
So it's much better to have the folks at Towboat paying you.
Yeah, they
than it
pay
is to
me
be paying
directly.
that out of the product.
I go and service you.
Right.
You're the member.
Yep.
We service you, absolutely no out-of-pocket expense, and Boat US pays me directly.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, over the years, when I first started this 20 years ago, there were a lot of non-members. A lot of people didn't know about it. And you could understand that. I didn't know there was a such thing and this and that. In this present day with social media.
Yeah, there's no excuse to not A, take advantage of it, and B, subscribe or get the membership.
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket, like I say, in the scheme of things. But you'd be surprised. We still have occasional.
Still have those guys.
I was going to get it.
I thought I renewed it, or I have it on my other boat. So it's not like AAA, right? Or is it? Does it cover you for every boat you're on?
It's for any boat you own. So
Any boat you
theoretically, you could have 15 boats.
But if So you just renew the membership, whatever boat you're on and you own, it's covered.
Right.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Can't
You
beat
could have,
that.
like I said, there are people that have a power boat and a sailboat and a jet ski.
Right.
All three of them are covered. The cost of one membership. And trust me, I've been a member since 1997. Because as I told you earlier,
Wow.
we've boated my whole life.
Yeah, sure.
My kids grew up on a boat. And about a month and a half ago in Florida, I got towed. I had to get towed.
You?
Yeah. Hell yeah. It happens to everyone, man. It took
Did
a
you
while.
tell him, hey, Cap, I'm a Cap.
No,
get how
I
to
didn't
do
say
this.
nothing.
Ah, you
know.
didn't do it.
I
You
just
didn't
called. I
do it.
told him when we got to my dock at
Yeah.
my home, But prior to that,
What did you do? Throw your anchor out and lose your anchor?
I was in a jam shooting flares off and everything, But no, man, it come in handy, and hey, listen, I'm calculating in my head how much of it would have cost me. I was pretty far from home when I broke down, and it probably would have cost me over $1,000 if I didn't have the membership.
Yeah.
Easily.
you.
So it was pretty cool. And you see the boat coming, and my daughter was
bring
with
a
me.
little tear to your eye,
Yeah,
right? Here
well,
I
my
am.
daughter was with me. She up visiting,
Yeah.
and Christ, the sun's. We're just supposed to be a 3-hour tour like Gilligan.
Yeah, right.
Next thing you know, I broke down, and really, Daddy,
But hey, there's an example that could have been later in the afternoon, and by the time they got to you, it's nightfall.
Nightfall, yeah,
and here you are.
yeah.
And the last little tip on night operations, we got off that subject a little bit, but another tip of those cheap little glow sticks
Mm-hmm.
that you can get.
Yes.
You can buy them anywhere. They're
Yeah.
pennies. I think you can get them at the dollar store for $1. So you just snap those, give them to everyone on board, and that's kind of like a festive thing. Woo! Hey,
Yeah,
come on,
yeah.
glow sticks. It's nighttime, but it can help if somebody falls in,
Oh, it's
and it can help
amazing.
you as a captain. It can help you sort of, there might be a time where you want to. Okay, night is falling. You've got to get in. You've got 5 people aboard, and you want to be able to do a quick count if it's a
Right.
bigger boat, right?
Yeah.
All 5. There are the 5. The kids have them on.
They're
And
real
if somebody happens
inexpensive. Yeah.
to fall in overboard, you can see them. They've got the
Mm-hmm.
glow stick going.
Yeah.
An inexpensive way to do
Right.
it. So it's
They-
all,
Some of them, the professional ones, they're actually in a black cartridge. You've probably seen them. They're a black cylinder that has a squeeze handle on it. And what that squeeze handle does is it snaps the element inside the glow stick,
Okay.
and they attach right to your vest.
Smart.
Yeah. So the commercial fishermen wear them,
And then there were all the basic things. There's, have a good spotlight. So many people have their nav lights, but they don't have a good spotlight. Relatively inexpensive, right? They plug into the PowerPoint, cigarette lighter.
right.
And
But you got to be cautious with that, because the last thing you want to do is illuminate the inside of the boat.
good point.
Night vision is
You
very
want to
important.
keep it forward.
Yeah,
Pointed ahead.
up and-
Somebody in the
and high.
bow or up
That's
high.
why most of the spotlights
Or
are
up high.
configured up on the remote control ones we have.
Yeah, if you eliminate the inside of the cabin of the
Yeah.
boat, now you're in trouble. That's why they have those red lights, right? Some of the red lights
Right.
will
Right.
still illuminate the
Yeah.
area, but
And
won't
all that
impact-
stuff's important. So in my, we call them float coats. It's a coat, but it's flotation inside it.
Right.
So that's what I wear at night, even in the summertime. And I have all safety equipment. I have the
Right
red
there.
light. I have a flashlight. I have a red
Right.
light. I have a whistle.
Yep.
All this stuff
Basic
is
stuff.
important.
It's
You wanna,
smart.
right.
I mean, you don't have to, you'd be a real geek if you wore that all the time as a pleasure boater. You have to do it as what you do. We're not saying a pleasure boater should wear a vest, but have that equipment with you
Right.
and easily available.
Right.
I mean, if you want to look, I'm not going to judge you. If you want to go out there and wear the vest with the safety equipment and a badge or something, go ahead.
Yeah,
do,
no, but
do
listen,
what you want to do,
they
but right?
make such lightweight stuff nowadays. During the day,
Just have it.
I wear hydrostatic.
Yeah.
When you fall in the water, it makes it go off, or you can manually pull it.
Yeah.
So
Well, I know
wear
you
that
walked
one.
in today and you were actually wearing your PFD. I had to say, hey, Clint, take it off.
They
We're,
have
doing
that
we're
work- they go
taping.
to
You don't have
work
to
day.
drive with that
They
thing,
have the
right?
go to work day. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Go to work with your PFD.
PFD, yeah, I saw that.
So my wife, when we paddleboard
Mm-hmm.
or kayak, either or, she wears one around her waist.
Smart.
So they have that style.
Yeah.
It's maybe a small little pouch.
You don't have to have the bulky.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's lightweight. The pouch is about this big, and it's affixed around our waist. That one, though, is not as manual.
I still don't get the manual pull thing. Again, if you're knocked unconscious when you fall overboard,
right. And that's why the good ones,
Yeah.
like we wear,
self-inflate.
our work ones, they're commercial grade, and they're hydrostatic, and they're good hydrostatic, because there's ones, and I don't know if they're still on the market, but what it is like an aspirin inside.
So as soon as it,
And then when the aspirin dissolves, it makes it go
Okay.
off. But what they found bad with them was if you were in a heavy rain, pouring rain, they could get wet
Right.
and activate it.
Yeah.
So ours are real hydrostatic. It has to go down to a certain pressure
cool.
underneath the water, then it makes it go,
All right, Clint, as usual, we got a little off track here from our night
That can
operation
happen.
discussion, but it's always good. That's what our podcast is all about, just sort of talking boating. All the basics, as everything, can be found on boatus.com. They've got a great section there on night boating and what to do, and plenty other topics. They've got the Boat US website is phenomenal. There are
Right.
a number of videos and information if you're looking for a resource, or if you're sitting on the boat one day and you've got nothing to do and you've got your laptop, it's a good read.
Yeah,
a little refresher.
boatus.com, it branches out in so many different directions.
Right.
So it's good. And a lot of the local, I think every local tower, wherever part of the country you're in, have a Facebook page as well.
Yeah.
So you can follow them. It just starts out Towboat
Yours
US.
is great. So Clint is with Towboat New Bedford,
Mhm.
and you cover that area pretty well. You've got three or four.
Yeah, we have 4
Boats up there.
vessels for our area of response. And I keep my Facebook page pretty active.
Yeah, there's good information. Although, if you're ever towing me in, just keep me distant. That picture you take of the boat you're towing in, just
Right.
keep it distant.
Yeah.
So, I have a friend who I asked to be in our commercial. We're going to shoot a commercial soon. And he's like, do you have to show my boat being towed? I said, no, we won't show your boat being towed.
Right.
But we're going to pull up and help you, and then we'll have you both leave underway. I said,
Yeah.
good. Because nobody wants to see their boat being towed.
Some
right?
people, it bothers them.
Yeah.
I think an embarrassment factor or whatever. And there's nothing
There's
to be
something
embarrassed about.
I know there isn't.
I don't understand
Unless you're a
it.
knucklehead. It's something, there are
If
some
you
people
did
who
something
should be
that you
embarrassed,
shouldn't have done.
Right.
But on a regular routine breakdown, it's no different than the road. If you break down on the road, you call AAA. You're not embarrassed that
Right.
you've got a blowout or something or whatever. You know what I mean? You just call AAA and they service you. No embarrassment. But for some reason, the boaters don't like it. So I've had a few people tell me, "Hey,
Don't take
no pictures of this,"
Yeah.
and whatever. And of course, naturally, I oblige them. I don't do it.
Well, there is the guy that, pumped 60 gallons of fuel into his fish rod hole.
Right,
I mean, if you
right.
get one of those guys, I could see there's an embarrassment.
And then I have other people taking pictures of me and posting
Yeah,
it on their
which is
own
great.
page. So
That's
it's
the beauty of social
everybody's
media.
everybody's
We like it.
different.
All right, Clint Allen, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right.
The Drift Podcast can be found at driftsociably.com or where all fine podcasts are heard. Boat US has been looking after the interests of recreational boaters for over 55 years. Our goal? To make boating better, safer, and worry-free. From coast to coast and over 600 towboats strong, the Towboat US fleet is the nation's largest. So when you need help on the water, you're not alone. For a day of worry-free boating, take us with you by downloading the Boat US app to get a tow or check weather and tides. Better boating starts here. Join today.